So first of all, we're just creating a simple Xcode project. Call it pod test. Using Swift, create a Git repository. Okay. Now in the terminal, we'll close that project. In the terminal, I've set mine up with a retro DOS prompt. We find our project in the Finder. This is our project. This is the contents of our project. Then we just select copy for that folder, and then CD paste in that path that we just copied. Okay. Now, if we have pod installed, we can just hit. So CocoaPod's installed. We can just type pod setup in that folder. It'll take a few seconds. Now, what we need to do inside our project folder, we actually need to create a file. So do this however you like. I'm going to use Sublime Text and save it into that folder. So I've got that in here. Test pods, pod test. Okay, and it has to be called pod file. Okay, you can see that appeared. So the first line, you can see all this documented in the CocoaPod's site. So this is the CocoaPod's site where it goes into the structure of the pod file. Find that at the CocoaPod's guides section. But the first line needs to be well, it doesn't need to be this, but we're going to go with using the AFNetworking Pod, and so it can be, as it says in the guide, it can be as simple as that. Or you can make it more complicated, have different targets, expect different versions, etc. But today we'll just do handle one pod. And pod is just a framework. And so hit save on that. Now you can go back to the terminal and type pod install. So that's finished, and that's now created a workspace that wasn't there before. So we can now open our workspace in Xcode. So here's our project, pod test, that we created earlier, but we're in a workspace, and a workspace can now also have pods. And pods that this workspace contains in the frameworks. So in the pods folder, you'll see AFNetworking, which has been brought down automatically. Because the name AFNetworking is registered with CocoaPods. If you want to find the name registered for a pod in CocoaPods, you can just search for it here. So if you want to look for a different framework, just search for it here and find the name, and that's the name you need to put in the pod file. And that's it. We've created a framework with AFNetworking. There's just one other thing I was going to show you. That is that AFNetworking doesn't work yet, obviously. Because, so if we try and access a class in AFNetworking in the pod test, let's go into view control. We just try and bring up an AFNetworking class. It's not there yet. Why? Because it's not brought into the project. It's in Objective-C. So we need to create a bridging file. In the curriculum, it goes through one way of creating that bridging file. There is another way, which I think is easier. And it's in Xcode. Just create file, new file, Objective-C file. So Objective-C file, call it whatever you want. And Xcode asks you if you'd like to configure a bridging header, and it does it all for you automatically. So now we've got this bridging header. If we click on that, we can actually do the import there for AFNetworking. If we look back at in here, we'll actually find where the build settings. We find our bridging header is automatically set up, so we don't have to worry about that. So now we've got our bridging header, and it's importing AFNetworking. We actually don't need that file that we created. So we move that to trash, that Objective-C file. And now we should be able to access an AFNetworking class. There it is, with code complete. So that's it.